Hey guys, just wanted to pop on here quick before my chat with Raoul to kind of let you know that we were already mid conversation talking about some charting, short term versus long term trading, what I'm looking for, what he looks for. So just want to kind of let you know that I didn't really have a introduction in the video. So that's where it starts. And then it's about 45 minutes and it was an enjoyable chat. Hope you guys and the rest of the exchange enjoys what we had to say. See ya.
There you go.
Yeah, we're good. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, I would say charting is like my context, but I'm mostly an order book trader. So I don't know how much time you spent ever looking at like an S&P 500 order book. Um, but like I'm spending most of my time in there looking at like sellers and buyers and it's flickering all around and I'm trying to find patterns, areas of support and resistance that I see more in the book rather than on a chart. And maybe it lines up with an area on a chart. And then that gives me like more conviction. And then maybe that ties into a bigger idea at play that maybe I saw on Real Vision or whatever. So I kind of like piece it out or usually I come from the outside in. So I'll like kind of get an idea from Real Vision or whatever, then kind of work it into certain asset classes. And then within those classes, I'm like, okay, what products are moving today that I'm watching? And then I'll start just diving right into the order book. So that's kind of how I do it. Charts to me, like, I'm a little.
How'd you get an edge in an order book versus an algo or a high frequency trading firm that sees all of the order flow before you?
Yeah. So,
I mean,
it's a good question. So like when you see like an order book, you'll see a lot of market makers, right? And a lot of it's like pretty evenly sided on like the bid and the offer. So my goal is to find like people executing that don't look the part, right? Like find the weird person in the market, find somebody making a mistake. And you just have to like kind of over years, you start to realize like what a S&P 500 book looks like, what a gold book looks like, how far it usually moves, like kind of finding true ranges. For instance, I tell people like cattle was like a good starter market for me because there's not many market makers in cattle. So you're seeing like true paper in there that need to actually
Did you ever work on the floor?
No. I was a poker player that happened to know a poker player who got into trading. And he was just on Facebook one day like, hey, if you guys like know me from poker and you're interested in something else, like hit me up. And then I was like, I don't know what trading is, but all right, like poker's boring after 7 years. So whatever, I'll do that. So I got hired in Chicago and they say, the basic story of like, this is what a sell is and this is what a buy is. And we like you because you don't have like trading experience, which you might bring in bad habits, but you do have risk tolerance, bankroll management skills, pattern recognition, everything from poker that kind of translates over well. So from there, we just started at order book level. So it's kind of what I know. So going to Real Vision and seeing the bigger picture, I was like, oh shit, that's like a whole nother level I had never even.
But does it help you or does it pollute your mindset? Because, you shouldn't really care about the picture in gold. You're just looking for the price action. And if you're kind of everybody's telling you it's going up and, does it just distort what you're trying to do?
I think if you hang on to your biases too much, yes. I know what I am and I know what I do. Like, even if I think the dollar is going to go higher or lower, like in the moment, I don't really give a shit. If it's flickering around and like people are selling aggressively, I'll just sell or find a way to fade it or whatever I see in the order book, I'll do.
What's your average time horizon?
That's anywhere from a couple seconds up to like a couple days if I want. I'm like a guy who likes to be flat at the end of the day just because like I'm a big like balance of life guy and I do take my work home with me more than I would like to, but being flat overnight is nice sometimes, not having to think about it. But yeah, so that's kind of what I do. It's a weird world for anybody who's not in it. And then
I know a ton of people came out of that world because obviously, there was a ton of floor traders that went upstairs. There was There was a huge amount of them in the European fixed income markets, like the Bund market and stuff. It was a great market for that. Even I would trade Bunds short term because they just traded brilliantly short term. Chart patterns worked, the order book worked, everything worked really well, and you kind of knew the big picture on it as well.
And
But
back in the day, you could kind of cheat a little bit back in the day, from what I've learned. You know, you could push things around a little bit more and not get asked questions.
Well, those are pretty big markets. So
Yeah.
even when I was running a pretty big hedge fund, it was still impossible in Bunds because it was so massively liquid.
Yeah.
So in macro stuff, you know, I remember trying it in silver, trying to break silver out, but you know, it's futile. And you think you're trying, and usually what happens then, if you've caused the breakout, you get it straight back in your face about 3 minutes later, and you feel like an idiot. So
yeah, it works until it doesn't, right?
Yeah.
I heard some stories of some people in the Euro Stocks 50 doing some big things and working for quite some time, and until it didn't, and then they ran into some issues. So, but
yeah.
Anyways, so I had written down some stuff that I thought would be cool to talk to you about, and I thought it'd be cool to just like post this on the exchange, just to, I don't know, have some content on there that's different from other places.
Yeah, well, thank you for putting content on there as well. Look, it's a painful journey because we've got to start somewhere to build it up. But you know what you're doing, and a few of you are doing, is really important, because the future of content is the fact that Real Vision's full of really interesting, smart people with different experiences, and we can all learn from each other. And you know, once we get that going and that flywheel going, it's something special, right?
Yeah. We've been kind of chatting about this in there, how we kind of had that initial spark of interest of the exchange, and then it kind of died for a little bit. And then we're kind of on our second wave. So it's kind of this, COVID's having its second wave, exchange is having its second wave.
I mean, the exchange has got that. There's a couple of bad functionality. You can't go back to the same post you're in. Drives everybody nuts.
Yeah.
And also there's no algorithm. So every post is equally weighted. So you lose everything quickly. But that'll all get sorted out because it's a third party who owns the software for the thing, and it's on their list. So it's coming in the next month or whatever. So meanwhile, we just build just the best quality content we can on them. People are going to come and enjoy it.
Yeah. I think it's getting great. Like a lot of the people who are naturally gifted or rising to the top, I just know that nobody else is making like little lifestyle vlogs like me, so I just do it for fun because I like showing people the other side of trading. And then you got people like you've seen like Fadul and Jeremiah and Weston, who are just like, you know, they're in a league of their own, and they're so like, they're those guys that you hate because they're always so humble, and they can't take a compliment. Like you could fire off 7 compliments to Weston, he'll just bat them off like no problem, to a point where you're just like, come on, Weston, just like take the compliment, man.
Yeah, but financial markets beat hubris out of you, right?
I don't know. People have met me before. They'd argue with that, I think.
That's the poker player in you.
Yeah, I ride the line maybe a little too far sometimes, but so I thought it'd be cool to ask you some of the questions that I've posted in the exchange, and just to see what other people have to say, and then maybe kind of you're able to answer them too. I wanted to start with the one I just posted today that I thought would be relevant to this. Is if you were to go like way back to old Raoul, and you had like one kind of aha moment at the start, like maybe you were a few years in, a few months in to like all this stuff, what was a key like aha moment that really helped you understand? Maybe it was help you understand if you wanted to be a macro guy, or helped you understand a trade or an idea better. Do you remember any of those?
Yeah. When I first sat on a desk, and you'll have done this, you sit in front of a bunch of screens and you're like, what the fuck is all of this? And you can't even focus on it. You don't really know anything what it means, and it's moving around, and you're like, how am I supposed to get to grips with why and what? And then I realized that I had learned charts, and the guys on the desk weren't using charts. And I just said, listen, any chance I could get a charting system? And then the whole world kind of unveiled itself to me. I could see the behavior of markets, what was moving, why, and then it would give you the question of, why is it doing that? And I learned really quick from that. And I've always said that charting thing, because I'm a very visual person. I'm not a maths person. I'm not a numbers person. I'm visual. So charts just open the whole world to me. And so that I've just always done that. And that was just, it was incredible. And we'll all find something that we can allow our brains to process financial markets. Charts was me. And then it was learning second order thinking. And that came from reading stuff like Investment Biker, Soros on Soros, Market Wizards, and the Barron's Round Table back in the day when Jim Rogers was on it with Felix Zulauf and all these guys. And it made me realize that what you think you should be thinking is not what you should be thinking. You need to be thinking of the effects and then the probabilities of those things happening. Never your own opinion on it, and never the news you're reading now. You know, as you and I talked about off camera, that Pfizer thing was a typical example of one of those things. You know, the first thing everybody goes, well, obviously you've got to buy the market gets slotted all day. Why? Well, it's because, you know, there's just a number of knock-on effects within that. Everyone was very long, you know, everyone was long calls, and then, you know, and then how the dealers were hedging the calls. And then on top of that, the fact that nobody asked the question about the actual thing itself. And once they figured out it needs to be at -77 and transported by mermaids and unicorns, they realized, well, maybe this was not the fix.
Yeah, I mean, I fell into the trap too. Like even as like a short-term trader, I walked in that day and you could feel a difference in the market early on. It was like a storm waiting to just buy off the open. I mean, the Russell 2000 was limit up, and if you see an order book at limit up, it's can go nuts. Like it's like March when everything was going limit down. It's just a crazy bullish feeling of the market, and that quickly changed. You know, but that didn't stop me from buying in my personal account like an idiot. I mean, I've had this rule of throughout 2020. I'm like, I'm not buying in 2020, no matter what happens. I'm just not. I put too much of my effort into like my big thesis of the year, and it doesn't involve buying stocks at highs. So what did I do Monday? Clicked right in there, right across the market, get on it. You know, this is different.
Whilst whooping and cheering at the same time.
Yeah. And then crying at the end of the day. No, I mean, it's just so funny because I'll look back and I'll be like, you know, you just still have so much to learn. No matter how deep you are in the game, you'll still make those like kind of amateur mistakes. Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah, always.
Yeah.
You can't help yourself. You know, human emotion overcomes you.
Yeah, big FOMO buy there. All right, I'll keep going on this. So another question I asked in there was try to identify, and this kind of comes into what we were just talking about, trying to identify a few of your best strengths as like a trader or an investor, and then trying to identify 3 of the things you're worst at. FOMO is one of my worst ones, if you couldn't tell. But I was wondering if you don't have to think of 3 or whatever, but if any could come off the top of your head as strengths and weaknesses.
My strength is I'm usually pretty good at long-term forecasting, not in terms of price, but in terms of how things play out. I'm usually pretty good at that. So the odds of that for me are much higher than anything else. The inverse of that is I'm terrible short-term. You know, what you do, I can't do, because I come with my own set of biases and I can't do it. Because if my idea horizon is longer, then I'm always trading against myself. You know, I'm not seeing price for what it is. So I don't really trade price in that way. I'm pretty good at reading a chart as well and seeing connections between things. So I look for across all asset classes, everything, and try and see the narrative. And it comes to you. You see, now not all narratives are correct narratives, and you know we'll all get it wrong. But the more consistent you see a narrative, and that narrative is not being seen by others, the better it is. And so I'm pretty good at that.
You create stories well. That's like one of the big takeaways I've found from you is that you're just like a master storyteller, right? And it seems like in real life you kind of are as well, aside from trading.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense.
Because again, so macro is a really complicated world because it's kind of everything. So how do you make sense of everything? You have to bring it down to a story. something that you can hold in your head that actually encompasses all of the things. So, if the story of Bitcoin becomes down to one simple thing, which is it's the world's best trade, that to me means a lot of things, but it's the narrative I can unpack easily and bring around.
It's good clickbait too.
Yeah, it's a great hook, right? But if you don't have a good hook on your narrative, if you can't make it simple, then it's not a narrative. It's a collection of random things put together that don't stand up to scrutiny. So I do find it's actually a useful process. That's why I put things in terms of like the insolvency. And that gives you a framework of understanding of which you can test things against.
Yeah, I think it was, I don't remember this, I'm bad with quotes, but it was like Einstein or somebody who said, if you can't teach somebody a concept that you know is correct, like, but they don't understand it, then you really don't actually know it. And like with you try to convey in a way where anybody can kind of grab that narrative and then take it from there.
And also, when I started writing Global Macro Investor, I purposely wrote research that way, the way we speak. So I was the first person to write kind of high-end research using the word fuck in it. Yeah. Everyone was like, oh my God. I'm like, but guys, this is how we speak all day. We all swear.
Yeah.
And even if you don't swear, you're not offended by it because it's around you all the time. So I just spoke and wrote colloquially. And everybody else, I remember, at a hedge fund, I get these pages of Morgan Stanley or JP Morgan research, and it was blah, 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 blah. And my ADD, you have to have ADD in financial markets. It's impossible. And I just get through, I just like, forget it. And you just can't read it. So I thought, well, just write convincingly in the way that people speak, and it works. And that helps you distill everything down to what really matters.
Yeah, we thank you for it. These the people with the lower IQ that need to really grasp onto it.
I don't know, maybe I'm just stupid, and I can maybe I'm Chauncey Gardner or whatever.
Oh, there you go. You can't accept the compliment anymore. You're just self-deprecating. Okay, Weston. Okay, so that's great, and I appreciate you for.
And
for
also,
doing that.
Questions of where I'm bad is because I'm a long-term guy. I'll run a losing position too long. It's just because if you've got a framework and it hasn't changed, I don't like using stops. If I'm trying to trade on something and apply leverage, I'll use a stop. But if it's something like the dollar, it just runs against me for periods of time because I've not been proven wrong. Price hasn't really changed. And so that can be painful. But it's just a feature of what I do. Because if not, I couldn't ever get the bigger trades. If I can't take that, then I couldn't get a trade like Bitcoin, or I couldn't get a trade like the Euro-dollar trade, because you have to learn to take pain. So it's bad and it's difficult for people when they try and follow what I do, because I've got a different time horizon.
Totally. I mean, I'm somebody who uses stops religiously. It's like, I
lose money in stops because I always then try and focus my time horizon too short term. Mm-hmm. Then I fuck it all up, and then I was right all along, and I'm out of a position, and I've booked a loss. So I just don't do it.
Yeah, it's not easy. There is some sweet spot in which you could take a bigger idea that you have and bring it down to a short term kind of style of mine. And those are some of the best trades I ever have, because I'll be able to take such little risk, but if I'm correct and it's like a phase shift or a bigger idea in the futures market, it adds up real quick. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. And even I will go for those. Mm-hmm. You see them from time to time. March was one of those opportunities where it was a no-brainer. You could trade on almost any time horizon and make money for a period of time. And you see that it sets up from time to time. Bitcoin's almost in that phase right now.
Yeah, we were a couple of people talking about how long it would take you to say Bitcoin on this. I think we got the under. Yeah, I actually had a trade the other day when the 30-year got up to like a 1.75 yield or something. So I'll trade like the UB market, the futures market. We'll have ZN, ZF, UB, ZB as like four of the markets I have up all the time. And there was a spot where, I love this idea that you and Van Meter have going of everybody's short the bonds right now, and they're especially out on the longer end of the curve. So I was just keeping in mind as a short-term guy, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to act on that right now. But if I see a day where we have a big sell-off or consecutive days, and then I find a spot in the order book that looks like I could get long with a pretty small risk, if that works and I find a bottom, that's a trade I can let run for multiple days.
And how I will use this is I'm looking at the chart, and if it starts breaking the trend, so let's say we get to, I don't know, call it in the 10-year 75 bits or something like that. If that breaks, then we're likely to see a massive acceleration because there's going to be a bloodbath of stop losses.
Yeah.
And so that to me is a really great trigger for me, because I know when it runs, that can run for weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great entry point right now. Yes, I'd take the same entry point as you, add into the spikes, because the risk of it really going against me, particularly with the Fed and the economy still slow and all of that stuff, means that the odds are in your favor of getting a good entry point. But the acceleration point is if it breaks the trend, and then you can go all in.
Yeah, it's so much harder as a short-term trader when those points break to get into a trade with determining your risk that well. Because let's say that midday, whatever, it does kind of break that zone you're looking at. Let's just say like UB starts taking off to the upside, and like that's great. I'm already in the trade, so like my short-term idea worked out well because I had a stop that was clearly defined. But let's say I wasn't in and I was waiting for that breakout to happen, then it becomes difficult for somebody like me to just click in the book because I'm automatically going to have to take way more risk to the downside.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have retests, sometimes. So it's difficult because you're basically asking me to pick a bottom, and to really define my risk. But it only works out a handful of times. So
yeah, and if you're shorter term and you're running tight stop losses, you're generally running bigger leverage.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't get it wrong very easily without losing money quickly.
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing because I have that trade, but I also have the TLT call idea, right? So I'm kind of covering it on both sides. I'm able to like.
How do you run a position like that then? Because that's not your natural trading style, right?
Personal account. Just have some fun with Real Vision ideas and stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah.
And how do you keep those two things separate in your mind?
Well, I
polluting each other.
Yeah, I treat like my day trading as like a sport. I'm like a super competitive. I hate losing. Like it's a game to me. Whereas the portfolio management thing, I think I look at it as more of like an intellectual, long term. I'm learning about lots of things. So like when I get to the office and then I leave the office, I'm trading actively, making 50, 100, 150 trades a day, in and out, scalping around. Sometimes I have these bigger ideas like I just told you about, but mostly once I leave, I shut that off and I think about the other portfolio. So it's two different worlds to me. And like one's the firm I work for in Chicago, and then the other one's just me trying to make money myself, which is much harder. I've had short-term
Isn't
day
that
trading.
weird that you have a dichotomy of you try and make money in your personal account one way and it work in the other? But it's true of most people I know. So a lot of people wouldn't run their PA as they would their books. Most people run longer-term positions PA, miles wider stop losses or idea stop losses as opposed to price stop losses. Yeah. Massively differently.
Well, that's a good example of why I haven't done that well in my personal account. I don't have stops. I don't know how much I'm risking. If I buy options, I'm crossing the spread like an asshole because I don't even know what a put or a call like spread is worth. Like I know what a spread is at a futures market. There's nothing in the middle of the book, right? So like exactly how much it's costing you to. But when I go onto TD Ameritrade or whatever, I just click market. Woohoo! Like, somebody's just laughing at me on the other side of the trade, like this guy. Sorry, my notes just disappeared for a second. Hold on. There we go. So we get it. You like Bitcoin. Don't worry. I have some. It's slightly uncomfortable. So I feel like I'm in the right spot.
Good. Yeah.
But in your career, what would be maybe 1, 2, 3 of the highest conviction trades you've had ever? I'm talking that, like, maybe Bitcoin's at the top of your list, and it surely sounds that way. But what other trades? I mean, I was only here since March, so I'm a newbie. I don't know some of your older
So
trades.
I had a euro dollar trade last year. Bonds, I'm generally, if I trade anything well, it's bonds, because they follow the economy. So it follows the kind of research that I do. So I had a really great year last year in euro dollars and the bond market overall. But euro dollar trade, I kind of brought everybody along for the ride. I made it very public. And I was like, this is the trade, focus on it. Everyone's like, the Fed are going to raise rates and the economy's booming. I'm like, follow this trade. And people made a lot of money, and that was a great trade, and I had a lot of conviction on it because I'd kind of lived it before. I'd lived the 2 economic down cycles. I knew what the trade was going to be. The best risk reward was that. And, I had a lot of conviction in 2008. I mean, I like the down cycle because in macro, all the returns come quickly because bull markets go on for like 6, 7, 8 years, and they tend to be 10 vol. Down cycles, all the returns get squashed into six to 18 months. So you can make a lot more money, which is the fact of why most macro people are always looking for market reversals. I think that 2008, just shorting the banks and stuff like that, I made good money out of that. And just, again, bonds, super easy. I had a very big conviction in the dollar. I was living in Spain, billing global macro investor in euros. All my savings were in euros. Everything I owned was in euros. And I just thought the dollar's going up. And I changed all my billing to dollars. Told all my clients, I'm changing it because I think the dollar's going up. And that was at 148.5 in the euro. And then I switched all my life savings into dollars. And I forced myself. I bought property here in Cayman and in Miami, so I couldn't trade it. And that was it. I took the bet, and it was a big bet, and it worked very well. Because the property went up and the euro collapsed after that. So that was one of them as well. And I had a huge conviction in 2002, again in the euro dollar market, because I like trading rates, and interest rates are going to get cut. And I had massive. I mean, I had I traded 1 million contracts in a month in euro dollars, which was gigantic size. And we had this, I can't remember how big it was. I think it was a calendar spread. And then we had some option strategies as well. But these were like 30, 40,000 contracts per leg. I mean, these were big trades. I think the biggest one we had was the calendar spread. I think it was 100,000 contracts a leg. So these were massive, massive trades. And we overstayed our welcome. And we made a lot of money. We had a good year, but there was a bloodbath, particularly in option volatility, because these things cost us nothing. They were like 3 or 4 ticks. Problem is the market makers knew we were huge. So they just halved the price of the options. And we lost 50% of the P&L of the trade, even though it's basically a bid offer spread.
Wow.
The pain of that. And then, the boss calling me and saying, what the hell's going on? I'm like, this thing's priced at 3 ticks. They've marked it down 50% on me, and there's nothing going on. But, so yeah, I've had some high conviction trades that have blown up in my face as well.
Well, you have to have a couple of those, right? Can't all be winners. Yeah,
I know. I've had plenty blow up in my face before. 2009 was the worst one. That's when I overstayed. Because I ignored my economic research, and just I'd had a great year 2008, great year 2007 and 6 and 5, and I was like, obviously I could do no wrong. My ship was smelling of roses.
Of course,
and everybody knew. I farted perfume. It was amazing, and so I just overrode all my research and said, no, there's going to be another leg. And it was done.
Interesting.
And then I wouldn't let go of the trade.
So you would tend to say that you hold things a little bit longer. And for me and a lot of short-term people, we struggle with taking things off too early, right? Because you're so used to kind of getting in and getting out what's given to you. But macro. A lot of the times, I'm assuming some people see the trade going in their direction for so long, and they kind of can maybe that this is the area that they were expecting. Oh, this would be a great area to take a winner, but the story continues to build, and you just
I mean,
see more and
that's
more.
hard, right? It's
Mhm.
hard because you start trading your P&L,
Right.
and that becomes hard. So, I will use trailing stops, mental trailing stops. Again, not tight stops, because again, we've all been stopped out overnight in Tokyo on some stupid price spike or
Sure.
whatever it is. So it's kind of a mental trailing stop loss. Where you're like, if the structure of trading changes, I'm out, because then I can take profits.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right. Well, I guess I got to keep it on a just a little bit lighter notes here, away from the investment stuff. Just some things. Actually, my wife, she likes to watch some of the Friday daily briefings. I like Raoul's voice; it's great, So you got that going for you.
Being
She
an Englishman
had,
always makes you sound smart, right?
yeah, exactly. She had a question for you that I promised her I would ask, and I'm wondering it too. Let's just assume that you were on death row and you had one last meal. It can't just be one thing. Like, let's make it like a really good, extravagant meal that just fulfills everything you'd want in that last one. What would it be?
Lebanese food.
Lebanese. So what's that
Lebanese.
include? I don't. You'll
So
have to
it's
excuse me. I don't
basically
really know.
Mediterranean. It's
Mm.
Mediterranean. So it's stuff like hummus, and it's flatbreads, and it's fresh salads, and it's kind of herby stuff with a lot of herbs in. It's grilled meats. It's garlicky lemon. There's a lot of the dressing on it. It's olives. It's lots of olive oil. It's sesame seeds, stuff like that.
Is it
It's
coming from a specific area, or is it like home cooked?
so this is um,
Like, is there a restaurant you would specifically want it from?
no, it doesn't matter to me, because
Oh,
Lebanese food. What's great about Lebanese food is it's like, if you do it properly, it's called meze, and there's maybe you have 20 different dishes.
hmm.
So if in portfolio terms, there's no risk of catastrophic failure, right? There might be one bad dish, but it's not like you're waiting for that perfect grilled fish and it turns up and it's not right. Here you've got lots of different things to try, different types of flavors, and it's fresh and it's healthy and it's all home cooked. So that's my go-to. So when I go to London, almost the first thing I do is find a Lebanese place to go and try that, or in big cities, New York and stuff, just because it's just really diverse, fresh, healthy, amazing, tasty food.
You ever spend time I'm in Chicago. You ever spend time here?
Yeah, spent time in Chicago.
I'm trying to think of a Lebanese spot that's like a popular one. I really can't. It's not something that a lot of people look for around here.
No, Middle Eastern food, you find it in some places, not in others. You can get similar with Turkish food, or Greek Cypriot food is pretty similar as well. By the time you get to kind of Iranian and stuff like that, it's more kebabs and simpler kebabs and rice. But that whole zone is kind of like a bit like Spain, a bit like Italy, a bit like France, a bit of India thrown in, and
Gotcha.
just yeah.
All right. So it's like tapas for you. They're going to be bringing in
Exactly.
20 different things.
That's right.
They're
I
going
mean,
to be like, this guy over here. He wants
don't
20
forget, I lived
things.
in Spain for 10 years, so tapas is in my blood. I've
That's
had a house
true.
there for 20 years.
I'm kind of known in my friend circle of the person who hates tapas because I just can't stand sharing. I'm an only child. I just can't stand, like, I find a dish that's out on the tapas, right? And they give you, like, let's just take an example. Like, okay, you got kebabs, right? They give you enough for the six of you to each have a kebab. Well, if I really like that kebab, I want all six kebabs.
There's something wrong with you.
I can't do it. Family style.
Well,
Can't
then
do
you
it.
wouldn't like Lebanese either. You'd
Well,
hate it. You'd be trying to protect every dish.
I could
You need
just
to be an
order it all for
octopus.
me. Yeah. Me and the wife could just go crazy. Yeah. Um, okay. So yeah, you live on, well, you kind of are on both Cayman Islands, right? Kind
So
of
I
split.
actually live on Grand Cayman, but came here for COVID, and then we're doing up the house. So we're doing a whole bunch of work. So there's work coming in the house all day, so we can't live in there. So we're here until that's done. So we go back around December 20 something, and then we'll be
Okay.
back in Grand Cayman.
I wanted to know, like, on the Cayman Islands, like, who are you? Like, are you just that's that Raoul investor guy, or are you like, you know, a party guy? Are you a guy who just keeps to himself? Are you a beach dude? Like, who are you there? What would people say about you?
A mixture. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I lived 10 years on a beach town in Spain, so I was the party guy, and that's what I would have been known. But Cayman Islands much less so, because I work hugely long hours, and Real Vision has really kind of absorbed everything. So I've kind of left all of that part of my personality behind and focused all of my energy on this. So yeah, I'm sociable, but you know, the problem is my photograph was at the airport, this huge picture of me, so kind of everybody knows me.
Welcome to the Caymans.
And it was, because it was like
buy some Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was literally a 6 foot by 8 foot picture of me.
Who did that? Was that your doing?
Yeah, obviously I put pictures of myself all over Cayman Islands. No, it was the Cayman Enterprise City, the special economic zone we're in, because Real Vision's kind of a cool business, so they were using us, but they just used me. So there's this ridiculous cheesy grin as you walked in. So I'd walk into the airport, all the customs people would just let me through in seconds because they all recognize me. And people would always take pictures with me against the thing. So, you know, I'm more famous than I should be in the Cayman Islands.
So
but it's a low-key place anyway. Generally, the Cayman Islands is really low-key. So, you know, it's a lot of people think, you know, you see it on Twitter, oh, it's a place full of rich people. It's actually not. It's pretty ordinary. But there's people like Iggy Pop and Mark Cuban who are here all the time, and nobody cares. Nobody drives a fancy car. One friend of mine is the only fancy guy on Ireland who drives his Ferrari around, and everybody laughs at him for it. Right. Because the roads, there's nowhere to go. Yeah. You know, so everyone drives a crappy car, and nobody cares.
Golf cart community? A lot of golf carts?
No, because it's too big for that, really.
Yeah.
And it is busy. You know, it's a real kind of first world place, Grand Cayman. And Little Cayman, we've got an electric car, a Nissan Leaf, and an old beaten up Land Rover.
Oh, Nissan.
Safari style. Yeah, Nissan Leaf. Can you get it? And Safari style Land Rover with a canvas roof that rolls up and stuff, with the bench seats in the back. But this island at 10 miles long, you don't want to be stuck in a golf cart driving 10 miles. The Nissan Leaf is the golf cart, but at least it's dry.
Good to know. Well, that's where the first Real Vision retreat's going to be, I assume, after all the COVID's done.
Well, the problem is the plane. You can only get 15 people at a time here, so you can't. So it keeps out all the riffraff, right? So we can't get busloads of people arriving because you only get 15 people on the plane. The plane comes 3 or 4 times in peak season a day.
I guess you're gonna have to do another video contest for 15 people. Just fly them all down. That'd be a good time.
You know, what's interesting is I think more people will have heard of Little Cayman combined in the last year than at any other time in the Cayman Islands history. Because every time I'm there, it says Raoul Little Cayman, and some of these videos have been watched by millions of people now. So I've done the tourism industry a lot here.
That's true. Some people probably don't like you for that, right? They're like, stop talking about it.
Well, they don't know yet because the borders are closed. But after that, when there's all these people snooping around my house, I'll just have to get more dogs.
Have you hired private security yet?
This island, there's no crime.
Oh, well, afterwards there might be. Who knows? Got all these Raoul people coming down.
Exactly.
All right, I'll let you go. I'm just going to ask you one more thing. I personally love war stories about back in the day, what it was like back in the day. You know, some sort of story that maybe it was during your London time, wherever you've been in a lot of places, but some sort of, it could be something with, you know, trading, somebody won an insane amount of money or somebody did an insane amount of drugs, just some sort of story from back in the day when you were, you know.
The best story I know, and I've told this a few times, but a lot of people won't have heard it, was the best trade I ever saw. And this was the trade I replicated last year in Eurodollars. So there's me running this hedge fund, and this guy we know, and I knew, he's an ex-Goldman trader who is now working at one of the most famous hedge funds in the world. And he's running a book, and you know, he's one of the traders. They hired a bunch of ex-Goldman Sachs guys in 1994 when the bond market blew up. And these guys were pretty famous, and the hedge fund itself is extremely famous. And we started hearing stories that this guy had come into the office. The Fed cut rates on like January the 6th, and nobody was back to work yet. He drove into the office because it was an emergency cut. Kind of what happened last year. And he went in and went limit long the end of the year Eurodollar futures, because it was 2001, the equity bubble. He just figured, okay, the Fed never cut once. We're in this massive bubble. The bubble's going to deflate. The Fed are in trouble. Rates are going to go down a lot. So Eurodollar futures are a bet on interest rates at the end of the year.
And he just clicked market like.
So he just went to his risk manager and said, what's the biggest size I can take? So he did the trade. And then he got on a plane and went to his house in Mallorca.
The airport trade. Love it.
And he went to Mallorca to his house and he didn't come back. And then the big boss called him up, and who'd flown over to London. This guy was now up more than anybody else in the firm. And the trade was really working out, but it had just corrected 75 ticks against him, which was a huge correction, 75 basis points in Eurodollars. So he'd given back a ton of the trade. So he was up like, call it 250, given back 75. His boss calls him in and goes, okay, you just lost a shit ton of money this month. I know you're up a lot. What do you want to do? And he looked at him and said, and he hadn't been in the office, hadn't traded another thing, not one trade. And he just looked at him and said, I want to double up. And his boss looked at him and said, do it. And he said, you've earned the right. And if you think you're in it, if you think you're in the groove, you should do it. And he doubled the position and went back on the flight that day, flew back to Spain, and then came back to the office in November, closed out the entire trade, made so much money that he retired. And that was it.
That's funny. We always joke about that in our office, doing the airport trade and putting something on max long, max short, going to O'Hare and just flying somewhere. You know, we always joke about
but this was a true story of macro conviction. He knew what he was doing. He saw the layup. He saw that nobody else did it. He thought 3 steps ahead of everything, thought out the probabilities, and knew that this was the fucking killer. And he was absolutely dead right. And I just basically copied him last year because I saw exactly the same setup. But it's like potentially the same trade as setting up in 30-year bonds, potentially. And it was, again, at the time when I did the trade and when he did the trade, it was record short positions in Eurodollar futures. Like we've got record short positions in 30 years. We've got an economy that's slowing down right now. You know, we've got potential more lockdowns. We know economic growth is not coming back fast. The virus clearly is not going to happen. The vaccine's not going to happen soon. And everybody's record short. So all you need is a chart pattern break and a shift of narrative. And that trade becomes a massive home run, which is why owning the call options is a better trade than trying to short-term trade it right now, because you don't know when all of those little pieces come together. But when they come, you'll know it.
So, but he did it in the futures market, correct?
He did it in futures.
So it's interesting because as I play that in my head, I'm interested in what was his downside thinking, because if he had just lollygagged into the office after a emergency rate cut, I mean, there was probably at least a bit of that move had already happened.
That's right. There was some of the move that happened, maybe 50 bips, 75 bips had already happened.
Yeah.
But he just looked at all the previous moves, and I can't remember where rates were at the time, call it 5%. He just figured out, chances are they usually go 300 basis points, and it only gone 75. So he'll probably figure, okay, it might push back 50 against me. So if I'm risking 50 bips and making 300 bips,
right,
that's a great risk reward.
Interesting. That's cool. It's also relevant to me because I'll sometime make that airport trade someday.
It's not supposed to be the wild punt. It's supposed to be the well thought out trade.
And if it doesn't go well, I'm going to say, well, there's this website I was on and a lot of things were going well. And this really talkative dude on an island somewhere, could be Hugh Hendry, doesn't have to be you, talked me into a trade, and there we go, scot free.
Exactly.
I'll send you the bill. All right, well, I'll let you get to it. Hopefully you don't have too many more of these. You can go enjoy a drink.
I've got an interview with Bloomberg.
So a little bit less important than me. Understandable.
A lot less important than you.
Right. Well, thank you for doing the charity with them.
You're the future of media. They're the legacy.
Okay.